And we are live. Hi, everybody. I am here. This is Rick Guidotti from Positive Exposure. Positive Exposure, of course, as you know, is a nonprofit organization that's creating a more inclusive and global, equitable community through educational programs, photography, film, workshops, webinars, and multimedia exhibitions. And today, Positive Exposure Connects is here with the extraordinary, the amazing, the beautiful, the stunning, the newlywed, our gorgeous Becky Curran Kekula. Becky Curran, she's part of the Disability In, which is the leading nonprofit resource for business disability inclusion worldwide. And Becky is make sure I got this right, the director of the Disability Equality Index. Hi, Becky. It's so good to see you. How are you, gorgeous?
I'm great. How are you?
Great, thanks. Really good to see you. So tell me a little bit about Becky.
Oh, so I guess the world wants to know about me.
Yes.
Well, we should first talk about how we met.
Oh, that would be amazing.
So Rick and I met at a Little People of America conference. Rick has been an amazing resource for the organization Little People of America, which is a nonprofit that is a great resource to people who are born with short stature and their families. I've been heavily involved as a coordinator of the fashion show that takes place every year. The conference, that's a national conference that takes place in a different city every summer, has several events throughout the week, and one really staple important event of the week is the fashion show, because it really allows people of short stature of all ages to find beauty within themselves and find clothes that work for them. We love to encourage people to pick their favorite outfit that makes them feel confident, and we want them to express themselves. So as the show takes place, we read quotes from the models themselves on how their outfits make them feel. But beyond that, beyond their outfits and beyond being in a big society that's not quite equipped for little people, we want them to feel empowered, to go above and beyond, to live their best life possible. And we feel that a fashion show, starting with beauty, is a place that everyone can get better at, find themselves, find their beauty in order to emulate it to other people. And Rick has been an amazing resource, especially with his background working in the fashion industry and transitioning to helping nonprofit organizations, people with all different types of physical differences or internal differences, feel empowered and better about themselves. I know that every time he goes up to a person, he makes them feel beyond what they ever think they can feel, just because of the way he addresses them. And it's not just about what someone looks like on the outside, it's what's inside and what value they can bring to society. And why it resonates so much to me is my parents, who I think are watching today, have been an amazing example. From the day I was born, they did not want me to be treated differently. I have an average height older sister who they wanted to be treated the same. They wanted me to be treated the same as her, and they wanted us to have a strong relationship. And now I can say, well, into our 30 years on this planet together, we do have a very strong relationship. And the basis of that is not treating us differently and appreciating us for the different beauty we can bring to the world.
Absolutely. That's so gorgeous. When I was working in the fashion industry, it was just so frustrating because there was beauty everywhere around me, yet we were limited to these very strict parameters of the beauty standard. And to open up those parameters and to allow all this gorgeousness to exist, to coexist, it's amazing. And the fashion show at LPA is the epitome of stardom. It's the electricity, the energy, the cheer, the love in that room. It's just amazing. And you coordinate the whole thing, and it's like mind-blowing that you can do all that.
It's so awesome to have people get really excited about it. And of course, with the world the way it is right now, we're trying to figure out how to even bring beauty to a digital format. Maybe people could do more on social media, share photos of them wearing their favorite outfits, get the word out. A lot of times people talk about having fashion designers customize clothes for little people, but one of the largest challenges is that there are 400 types of dwarfism, and even other people with the type of dwarfism I have, achondroplasia, there aren't always going to be people who are my shape and size. It would be very challenging to try to find someone who could customize to each and every one of our types. So what makes sense is going to the stores, finding something that makes sense, and working with the tailor to meet your needs, meet them, having them meet you where you are. I could say I actually can admit that I have not been to a tailor in probably about 6 years because I rely a lot on dresses that are shorter, but they're longer on me. They go to about my calves, and I rely on sweaters that are 3/4 length. That was a great fashion invention that happened a while back. And even capri leggings I can wear as regular pants. So there definitely has been an advancement, but I would say it's important to help people find what would look good on them and then have them work with someone who can help them adjust accordingly. Because a lot of times little people may go to the children's section of a store and they may not, as an adult, necessarily want a truck on the back of their sweater. They have to meet people where they are.
That's so true. Now you just had a, but every time I see you, you're always so chic and so beautiful and so really well put together. You're so stylish. Tell me about your experience finding your beautiful wedding dress. Now, everyone, that Becky just got married. She came home, got home from her honeymoon just before we were all safe at home. We had to be quarantined, but she was on her honeymoon. But I saw the wedding photographs, and your dress was mind blowing. You looked so gorgeous. You were glowing. It was amazing. But the dress was perfection. Where'd you find it?
I have to be honest, I was dreading that process of trying to go shop for a dress that it was clear that it was going to be very long when I was trying it on, and how could I really tell that it was going to be the right dress for me? So we had gone to one place where I didn't find something, but I tried on about 7 dresses. Then we had an appointment to go to 2 places in one day. And the first place that we were supposed to go to that day canceled on us because they had a health issue that happened within the person who was running the store. Oh. And then that meant that we only had one more option, and it was getting close to crunch time because this was in December. The wedding was the following August, and I didn't live near where I was looking for dresses, and the pressure was on at that next store to find the dress. And I tried on several dresses, probably about 7 to 9. Usually they have a limit where they're like, try 5, you got to pick one of the 5 or just move on to the next store. But I was really happy to work with this lady. She was so amazing at helping me figure out what worked for me. And it was like boot camp. I had half of my bridesmaids there with me, my mother and my aunt and my niece. And
I saw those photos.
So we tried to get the feedback from my niece, but she was only like 4 months by then. And it was, I think the best part about that experience was that it was like boot camp, but in the right way. I think one of the things that I've struggled with my entire life is trying to convince people that they just need to give me constructive feedback so I can know how to do it better in the future. Same with, if something looks bad on me, tell me. And we got down to 2 dresses and we went back and forth, tried them on back and forth a few times, and then finally decided on the one that we chose. And one of the benefits of the one that we chose was when you go to send it to the store with the specific order and sizes that you needed for that dress particularly, they were willing to customize it a little bit more and cut more off than maybe your usual dress designer would. So this was Casablanca Bridal, and it was in their custom area. And we made sure that they got rid of some of the netting underneath as well, because we didn't want it to be too puffy. But it worked out perfectly, and I couldn't be happier.
Beautiful.
So excited.
A beautiful bride, and a bit. And let's. I mean, the wedding was fantastic. I saw like bazillions of photographs, and I just felt like I was there. It was stunning. But you're such a strong advocate as well, and an activist for human rights and disability rights, and to be seen, and everyone to be seen and heard, and to be included in an equitable community. Very much like positive exposure. What is that drives you so strongly, and that makes you such a stellar advocate and an activist?
I always go back to the story of when I was born. My average height parents back in 1984 didn't have many resources when they found out that they had a baby with dwarfism at the hospital. There was one other nurse or doctor in the delivery room who was able to determine that I had dwarfism because she had seen someone with dwarfism be born before. And one of the reasons why this is so rare are there are only 30,000 people living with dwarfism in the United States. So not many people have a child with dwarfism. And after my parents left the hospital when it was safe to do so, they were referred to a geneticist at another hospital. They ended up getting to the hospital to check in with the receptionist, and the receptionist directed them to where they needed to go. And the way she delivered the directions were, you need to follow the sign down the hallway that says birth defects. And then you're going to go in an elevator and you're going to hit the button for the floor that say birth defects. And then you're going to get off the elevator and you're going to follow the signs that say birth defects, and you'll be meeting with the geneticist there. And that was just one of those stories. Of course, it fueled fire within my parents, just really wanting to find someone who they could trust to give them the information they needed to feel confident in raising me as an independent child, regardless of medical complications that could come up along the way. And they were told to go to this office of this geneticist who identifies as a birth defect specialist. And my dad wrote a letter to the hospital and he said, you know what, this isn't fair for families to come in and see a sign like that, when the truth of the matter is they're going to meet with a geneticist. I highly recommend you change the signs. And fortunately they did. And I think that just drives my passion, because I don't want people to continue to be born into this world and be told that they have birth defects and imperfections. I think we're all brought to this earth for a reason. And a lot of my advocacy started out working behind the scenes in the television and movie industry, because I wanted to change what we see in the media, because it affects how people like me are treated in society. If there's a positive portrayal of people with dwarfism in the media, we're respected. If there's a negative the next day, we're disrespected. People don't believe us if we say that we're not that person on TV, because there are more than one of us in the world. And we want to be treated as humans. And I think the other thing is, as a part of the dwarfism community, as a part of the disability community, we're not asking people to give us a break. We just want an equal chance to participate as productive members of society. And once people give us a chance, they'll understand and learn how much we have to contribute. And I think a lot of what I try to do in the way that I advocate is offer constructive feedback, because it's what I've always wanted, rather than saying you're doing everything wrong and you're never going to get better. I think it's important to be level set as well, understanding that we have a long way to go, but if we have productive conversations where we help each other out, we're going to get a lot further.
That's extraordinary, Becky. It's what's driving you on a daily basis. And when positive exposure has been working in the kind of in this working with so many great individuals for over 20 years, and it really is always about collaborating with communities that are at risk of stigma and discrimination, and more importantly, exclusion. What is your advice for positive exposure or other organizations that are out there advocating and celebrating human diversity together, that will be joining all of us together and not keep it so so separate?
I think one of the biggest challenges, specifically with the disability community, is that people are afraid of offending and they're afraid of using the wrong terminology. But then that causes them to exclude the community because they're avoiding confrontation or avoiding addressing the community in a respectful, humane way. And I think it just takes being curious and asking questions and knowing that you may not be right the first time, but the community is equally there to help you get better and understand that you're learning and we can learn together if you open your mind up to it. And then I would say, just even within the little people community, a lot of people may not themselves identify as someone with a disability. And I decided early on in my advocacy that I would identify as a person with a disability, because under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are covered. We do require step stools in certain scenarios, pedal extensions for driving. A handicap placard is actually beneficial to the little people community because in parking lots, people can't see us. So we avoid the risk of getting hit by a car. And I also know that there are a lot of people who I can learn from within the disability community, and it's a larger population to advocate on behalf of. But within the little people community, there may be people who don't identify as such, and that's okay too. So I think it's people coming to terms with their differences and finding people they can relate to. I'm not saying that I can relate to every single person with dwarfism living on the planet or every wheelchair user, but it's admitting that you may not understand what they're going through, but you're not going to treat them less than. I've had scenarios where someone may say to me, I moved here to the States from India, and my cousin and I were adjusting to the same school, and I didn't want to be seen with her because I was equally trying to make friends as she was, but it wasn't as bad as what you've had to go through in your life. And that I always try to stop people, because I think a challenge is a challenge, and we need to meet people where they are, but also understand that challenges aren't the same for each person.
Beautiful. Fellow advocate Brandon Farbstein is saying, so much love for both of us, for both of you.
We love that boy.
Yeah, we sure do. Hi, Brandon.
Trailblazer.
He sure is. And he's such a great actor. You have a lot of friends who are also popping in, saying things and looking for you and saying hi to you as well. I haven't seen your dad or mom pop in yet, but maybe they will, hopefully. Yeah. So what advice would you give to, say, a family of a toddler who has dwarfism, or just words of encouragement, advice? You have such great experience, and at the same time, you have such a great way of looking at things, and you seem to always put the right spin on it. So you make it seem just so like just natural to ask these questions. There's no fear here. There's no fail. There's maybe just kindness is.
Exactly. I think it's important just to be open about what you may be going through or the struggles you may be facing. I think we've come a long way since the day I was born back in 1984 with technology and a lot of resources out there. But I would also say don't get lost in all of the resources out there. There is a lot of media because of all of the outlets that exist now. There may be negative that are the first you see, and you don't want that to be your only perception and think that that's the future for your child. There's a huge community out there willing to be a resource, but the biggest thing is don't treat them any differently, and offer to help as they're growing up, offer to help them and support them, but they're going to be eager to have an equal amount of independence as well. And same with when people are interacting with a little person in public, offer to give assistance if they need it, but don't just assume that they need it right away. Just put it out there. You're willing to help. You're willing to be a resource. And then those people who immerse themselves in communities like ours are less afraid if their future means welcoming someone with dwarfism to their family.
Our friend Graham from Freya's dad from Sweden is asking, did you feel offended if someone kind of squatches down to speak to you on your level, or would you rather just speak normally, or how would you feel? What is the best approach to that situation?
That's my number one question lately.
Okay.
My answer usually is, if there is an area that's close by, if we're in a social scenario, maybe we're at a networking event, if there's an area close by with chairs where we could go sit and have a conversation at eye level, that may be preferred, because you don't want either person to be in pain, like me staring up or them trying to slouch down.
Of course, common sense.
But really take a read for the room. Is it going to look really obvious that you're leaving the entire event just to go find those chairs? Or is it a subtle, why don't we go over there so we can hear each other? Because it may also be a hearing thing if one person's up really high and the other one's lower. So if the physical space allows for going to an area that's quieter or a place where you could sit down in a subtle way, I would welcome that. But then if you're only going to be at this event or talking for a few minutes, it may just make sense to work with what you have.
Makes sense. Terrio Martinson sending, she said you had a marvelous support group of friends through junior high and high school, and many are still solid friends today.
Yes.
So
I actually, so he's talking about a youth group that I was part of. We went every Sunday during the school year, and then we went to a camp at the end of the summer. So it was a good way to reunite with friends after whatever was going on during the summer, the last week before we went back to school. And when I had back surgery in 10th grade, I was sent 30 cards a day for the 2 weeks I was in the hospital from the youth group. So I will never forget that.
Oh, wonderful. Danny, I want to know if you ever played any of the games that they have, certainly during LPA. There's those incredible world games that I've been so fortunate to photograph. Have you ever been, are you an athlete as well, on top of the billion of other things that you do?
I didn't become active in LPA. My parents did host some chapter events when I was younger, but I made a decision not to be as active in LPA until the conference came to Boston in 2003, which was my first active year. And I had been participating in sports among my average height peers up until that point. I did about 12 years of soccer, sailed every summer from 8 to 18, tried out skiing and swimming, was on the high school swim team, but I never played in that competitive way with the games. I actually did go to an event in Rhode Island. It was a swimming event organized by DAAA in a regional sense. And I thought that I had all this practice swimming and that I was just going to crush everyone. And boy, was I wrong. It's competitive. But I think maybe like 2004 in San Francisco, I may have played soccer for one of the rounds, but I didn't stay super active.
Are you still sailing?
I need to. I want to. We did actually at the convention this summer in San Francisco, we did take a sunset sail. We did not realize how intense it was going to be with the wind, but we went under the Golden Gate and it was gorgeous.
Wow.
I do miss it.
Yeah, great. So what are your new plans, your next steps, your next plans? First of all, you're newlywed. And then where you're living, are you going to be traveling as much? How is this?
Surviving quarantine.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate with the work I do that I've worked in a remote scenario for the past 2.5 years. And that allows me to connect with people virtually. Beautiful. Before this all came about. I think this is a groundbreaking time for the disability community because a lot of employers who assumed that people couldn't be productive in their jobs from home are starting to realize that they can be. And places like New York City, where people have to find an accessori to then get to the office, may make them late, and that may affect their rapport in a professional setting and may affect whether or not they can stay at an employer. Cutting out some of those steps to allow someone to wake up, get out of bed, and put in a full 12-hour workday, whatever it may be, can change things. And I hope it will. And I hope people will continue to be innovative and understand that the disability community has a lot of innovations to offer. But it's really just going to be, how will this all lay out in the coming months? The biggest thing is people who struggle with strong immune systems are going to be affected. And I think we just all need to worry about staying safe, but see how we can have an impact, like sharing stories on platforms like this and still getting the word out there. But we also have the potential to reach more people than we ever have before through these digital platforms. And hopefully we can continue to connect on a global scale and teach people that disability isn't a bad thing. It's an asset to society if people let it be an asset to society.
And again, we're better together. We're
Yes.
all around the globe. It's a unique experience for every single one of us in every corner of the world, so that we really can, in every part of the world, that we're all in this together, and we're better together. We're on all equal access. And so tell me a little bit more about your Disability Equality Index and being the director of that. And tell me, what is Disability Equality Index and exactly what your challenges these days are?
The Disability Equality Index is a benchmarking tool that companies with 500 employees or more take as a self-assessment. And it's about a 30 to 40 hour process, but we give companies several months to go through that process. And they're evaluating their policies and practices to make sure they're being inclusive of people with disabilities. And it's modeled off the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index, which measures LGBT inclusion. And we want to just make sure that disability is part of the diversity conversation, that it doesn't drop off where people are talking about people of color, women, and then they have ... without any disability mention. Making sure if there are senior leaders that they're inclusive of people with disabilities, getting them to identify as being an ally or someone who has a disability themselves. And once senior leaders become more proactive and set an example for the company, then their company is going to understand that it's okay to have a disability. And then making sure that buildings are accessible, especially those that were built after the ADA was passed in 1990. And then making sure that benefits are accessible to people with disabilities. Recruitment, making it known that you are willing to make an accommodation if someone asks for one, from the career application process to when they're setting up the interview. Put it out there, make it known so they don't feel awkward or they don't think that they're not going to be asked to go to the interview if they identify as someone with a disability. Making sure that people know that once they start working at a company, there could be an opportunity to advance. Not everyone wants to be an administrative assistant or a secretary for their whole life. And then accommodations, making sure that companies consider having a centralized accommodations fund, because centralized accommodations fund take off the barrier from managers who are thinking about hiring someone, but they're afraid of accommodations costs that may come with it. But in fact, most accommodations costs are less than $500.
Wow.
And then there's a part about community engagement, engaging with the community. If you have social media postings, are you making them accessible? If you have a smartphone app, is it accessible? Are you getting your employees to volunteer for disability organizations so they can learn and understand more about the disability community? Do your marketing materials include people with disabilities? In addition to making sure they include people with disabilities, steer away from stock photos. Use beautiful photos that Rick has to make sure your employees or consumers can see themselves in those materials. And then supplier diversity is another big piece of what we are advocating for, because Disability In is the certifying body for service disabled veteran-owned businesses, disability-owned businesses, and veteran disability-owned businesses. And that allows people who are people with disabilities, innovators, entrepreneurs, for-profit businesses, 51% owned and operated by people with disabilities, can get certified and become vendors of choice with the corporations who engage with the index. And then we're starting to gather information on what's going on outside the United States. But we have to just continue to research, because disability means something completely different in every different country. And we need to understand what the laws and rules and regulations are. In some countries, they have a requirement and it's a mandate to hire a certain amount of people with disabilities. Here in the US, we have companies that are federal contractors, and through the OFCCP, they are required to have a hiring goal of 7%, but they don't necessarily get in trouble if they don't reach that 7%. They just have to be working towards it. And we hope that companies are actually working towards 20% because that would be more representative of the population, people with disabilities in the whole country.
Wow, beautiful, Becky. That's incredible. It's extraordinary. And we can all, any advice that you can give to and any new business or corporation that really needs to take bigger strides and really get to that 20%, what are some of the biggest obstacles that they find? I mean, just their own fear or their own biases. They can all know that's going to be too expensive, or
I think one of the biggest challenges has been the assumption that hiring people with disabilities won't help the bottom line, where in fact we did research with Accenture on the data from the first 4 years of the Disability Equality Index, and we were able to prove that it does in fact help the bottom line. And we'll continue to monitor that and update the research, but it really does. Just think about it. If you give people a chance, the amount of work that they can push out, even the autism at hiring initiatives that have been taking place at a lot of technology companies, and how much work can be done. And there's a lot of advancement if people give it a chance. And I think it's even back to what we were talking about before. People are afraid of the terminology, don't even know where to start. So then it causes them to avoid the community altogether.
wow.
And it takes having people within companies become strong advocates. So my biggest piece of advice is anyone who works at a company that can have influence at hiring more people with disabilities, come out with your story. You can identify as an ally today. You don't have to have it within your family or within your friend group, but you probably do.
Well, wonder, extraordinary, amazing. Who are some of your heroes?
My dad.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love your dad.
I think I always kind of tell people a story. My dad grew up in a tough scenario, parents who didn't respect him very well, and he deserved to have all the respect in the world. And he did everything he could to raise my sister and I the opposite that he was raised. He was even told many times in his household that he wasn't going to amount to anything. And he obviously didn't believe that for the rest of his life, because he was able to transform the lives of so many people and continues to do so. People get confused because they can't see how we're related since he's 6'4", but we have a very strong relationship, and I respect the way that he worked very hard to get my sister and I to be very close. And of course, my mom 100% on board the entire time as well, supporting these efforts. But the fact that he came from a family that thought he wasn't going to make it to where he's been able to support us to this day, I continue to be thankful for that.
Wow. And do you get a lot of your activism and your advocacy skills from your dad?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think the intentional piece too, of just not bashing people, telling them they're doing everything wrong, finding a way to meet them where they are. And my mom really helps with that too. She wants me to always give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and a peacemaker. And I think it's important. And even when it comes to having a bad day, of course, even especially when I was living in New York City, walking down the street, 8 million people live in that city, I was going to come across many people with many comments about my physical stature. And I could let it get to me all day, every day long. And maybe there are days that I was affected more than others. But he always says, okay, you can be sad today, but get back up tomorrow and be stronger. And same with back to the fashion piece. I had a friend growing up who had similar advice where she said, you may be bummed out right now and you're just in casual clothes. Try dressing up tomorrow. You'll feel better. And that's why I do take pride in trying to dress up as much as I can, even if I'm more dressed up than other people in the room, because it really does help with the confidence.
Yeah. Well, you always look so chic. As I said before, you're always so gorgeous. And the fashion show, I mean, it just how it just easily, because it's so natural to you to be just so stylish and chic. And then the fact that you started directing these fashion shows, and they're really are sensational. They're amazing, and I've seen them it's transformative, because you are backstage, I'm back there shooting away, and then there's a lot of nervousness, and then all of a sudden get out there, and there's this strutting that goes on, and and this almost like just floating down and the screams and the cheers in the audience. It's kind of, it's just it was an extraordinary experience. Several times we've done it together. And I thank you for always having that opportunity, because it's just something that I always look forward to. It's so great.
And we'll have to bring some of those pictures back for the audience in the future. We'll do another one of these.
Yes, that would be really great. And so what are your plans now? The LPA conference was canceled for this summer because of the COVID-19. Are we doing a virtual conference?
I think it'll be just kind of different things scattered throughout, so different opportunities throughout the month of July and beyond. So it would be great to try to just reinvent any of that we can in a digital format.
Wonderful. That would be awesome. I would love to, we need to get started on our building
Yes.
up our Pearl Ambassador platform with our LPA friends. So
yes,
you're going to be our first Pearl Ambassador. I know you're busy, Becky, but I please,
fabulous.
Pearl Ambassador. It's such great stories, and you're such a great storyteller. So, and you just kind of make
And
it.
I should have worn my pearls for the occasion. I just wore the sparkly.
That's great.
I'll have to go back to the pearls.
Right. So tell us a little bit about married life.
Well, quarantine's a good test of it.
Yeah.
We're still alive.
Yeah.
No, it's been great. We had a wonderful time in Hawaii. It's been nice. Just having a companion. But it's been about 4 years since we first met on Facebook, and it's all going well.
Oh, wonderful. And your mom and dad are healthy? They're okay? They're still in Hawaii,
They're
right?
in Hawaii. They're trying to stay healthy by staying in Hawaii. They've been going to the beach boogie boarding. Because you have to, I think you have to go to the beach to have something to, you have to have something to do when you go to the beach. So you go straight to the water, do some boogie boarding, and then you have to leave just with all the mandates and staying safe. And then they do the grocery store run early in the morning to be with the seniors. So not too many people are at the grocery store once a week.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. I love all that. That's great.
But
So,
they do have a grandson they're eager to meet. My sister had a baby on April 5th. So
no, how wonderful.
they're in Boston and thriving, but
they're just waiting. Oh, it must be so hard for your parents that they can't be holding that baby. That's a fantastic.
virtually.
Yeah, virtually. You'll get there too eventually. I'm sure of it. We will. So I guess we should just kind of wrap up right now. I want to see if there are any questions for you. I just see a lot of your friends are waving and saying hi, and you're magnificent. You're fabulous. I haven't seen your mom and dad yet, but Maria McClellan says beaches and parks just opened in Hawaii. So
perfect.
That's good. So sorry. And when were you there? When did you come back?
We came back on a red eye March 15th. So we got home early March 16th. Right before the chaos.
Before the chaos. So you missed.
But when we were in Hawaii, we started hearing some of the announcements like MLB being postponed and the college basketball tournaments being canceled. So we tried to avoid it, but
you couldn't. Well, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you here on Positive Exposure.
Yes.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
Oh, I love this. I'm just what ways that we can continue with this vision of beauty and self-acceptance, of course, but really it's really about having that mirror and seeing all that beauty that we're surrounded by, that we're only allowed to see it in this little area. But how exciting to have an organization like LPA that they get it. They're like, no, beauty, look at this. And it's like, wow.
Right.
So many of the advocacy groups, and it's so great to give you that whole, for you to run that fashion show, which is great, and just everything that you're doing is just so magnificent and marvelous and helpful.
And just back to the just theme of beauty in general, I think it starts with storytelling, especially now we have a lot of downtime. Hopefully people have some downtime. Start putting your story out there, make it known how your life's been, moments in your life that maybe have been a challenge, and other moments that you are proud of. It's okay to be proud of moments in your life as well. I think the more people who share their stories, the more we'll realize we have in common.
Sure, absolutely. Our shared humanity.
Yeah.
And we are better together.
Forever.
It seems like we're all separate. We've never been more together than this very moment, and we're all virtually arm in arm, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, giving big squeezes and just sending lots and lots of love out there. Becky, thanks so much. You're just
Thank you.
extraordinary. Love you so much. I can't wait to give you a hug when I see you. It's going to be soon, I hope.
Yes.
You take great care of yourself, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye. Remember, we're better together.
Yes.
Bye, gorgeous.